Okay. There he is. Good afternoon. The Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust for January 21st will be in order. And the first item on the agenda is a resolution. Recognizing our customer service superintendent for 37 years service, Pete Losberg. She's here. Why don't you come down? We'll let the clerk can read it.
Whereas Paula Losberg, known as Pete to all her City of Oklahoma City employees and friends, is retiring on February 3rd, 2014 after 37 years of exemplary service to the citizens and leadership of the Utilities Department. Whereas Pete became a City of Oklahoma City employee on August 3rd, 1976 as an account clerk 2, earning $3.44 per hour. Whereas on April 20th, 1981, Pete transferred to the Personnel Department as a personnel technician, subsequently was promoted to Personnel Analyst and Personnel Specialist. In January of 1988, Pete transferred to the Utilities Department, where she spent the next 26 years. Whereas Pete served as Management Specialist in 3 divisions of the Utilities Department, Line Maintenance Administration and Customer Service, from 1993 to 1999. Whereas Pete received a commendation on April 20th, 1995, from Jim Couch, then Utilities Department Director, thanking her for her hard work, dedication, expertise, enthusiasm, and initiative during implementation of a new billing system. And whereas Pete was instrumental in the new system's implementation, overseeing the system security, purchasing and installing of printers, developing the training manual, installing and setting up equipment, defining nodes, and front-end computer assignments. Whereas Pete was promoted to Unit Operations Manager in the Utilities Customer Service Division on February 1st, 1999. And in 2005, Pete oversaw the implementation of new meter reading devices, a new billing system, and a new meter replacement program. In 2006, Pete acted as Line Maintenance Division Head until the position was filled. Whereas Pete and her employees have displayed commitment to huge changes and improvements to customer service. And whereas during her 26 years in the Utilities Department, Pete was instrumental in many other projects for improving efficiency in the workplace and quality of service to the customers. Now therefore be it resolved by the Chairman and Trustees of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust that they do hereby recognize and thank Paula Pete Losberg for 37 years of service to the City of Oklahoma City and to the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust, and congratulate her on her retirement.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead. Go right ahead. Pull it down so you can.
I'm really proud of my service with the city and with the utility, and honored to have worked with a lot of really knowledgeable, skilled, and wonderful folks. And again, I'm really proud to have had this service with the city. And now I'm on to my next chapter. And as I told Jim earlier, my main objective off the bat is to live without an alarm clock. Thank you. I really, really do appreciate this.
Thank you. We need a motion on the resolution. So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the resolution. Voting, please. Resolution approved. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I had the honor of actually hiring Pete in '88 when we into line maintenance, and then she left and went to Public Works later, and I hired her back in '94 or '95 back in Utility Customer Services, and then I promoted her in '99 to Utility Services Superintendent. So I take a little bit of joy in reviewing her career. She certainly served the city well, but she's also very much served the water utilities well.
Thank you.
And she must have started when she was about 12.
Good, well, thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the January 7th meeting.
Move approval.
A motion and a second to approve the January 7th meeting minutes. Voting, please. Minutes are approved. Next item is the consent docket.
Second.
Are there items to be considered individually? Hearing none, voting, please. Consent docket's approved. Next item, concurrence docket.
Move approval subject to individual consideration.
Second.
A motion and a second on the concurrence docket. Are there matters to be considered separately on the concurrence docket? Hearing none, voting, please. Concurrence docket's approved. Next item, item 6, items for individual consideration. First item, do we need executive session on the
No,
policy?
sir.
We do not. We have to have a motion to strike.
Move we withdraw.
Motion to strike. Second, do you have a second? Motion and a second to strike the item 6A. Item stricken. Items from trustees. Yes.
I was at a neighborhood meeting the other night, and there was a great deal of concern about our new watering schedule, rationing schedule, not rationing, but conservation schedule. And there were some other options that suggested at that meeting, and I was hoping that we could get some kind of a look at how effective they might be. He wanted it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for odd numbers, and Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for even numbers, or something like that, where it wouldn't change. So if you set up water Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you could do that all the time. Anyway, I do think it's worth looking at. See how, if we've got any history about how that would affect the water consumption.
Yes, sir, we will so do.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think it's important that we find a way to make it as user-friendly as possible, but that it work. I mean, it has to be something that works. And so looking into the details of it is certainly nothing wrong with that, because I want one that is user-friendly enough that people will feel comfortable in doing it. Any other trustees have a comment? Next item is the general manager's reports. The first one is the status report on the utility department for December.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have vote stalls. Pardon me, status report. You can tell I'm already confused by my own agenda. This is really pretty good. A couple of things off the monthly report for December. We were below normal rainfall. Lake levels reflect that, but lake levels remain about the same and not unusual for this time of year, with the exception of Lake Canton. Lake Canton's up about 2 inches since the last time we reported. Also common for this time of year, again, you're seeing continued very dry weather west, and some of that's coming toward us and has reached us already. Of interest, though, we sold 2,438 water meters since the start of the fiscal year. It's a half a year. And the calendar year total for 2013 was 4,120. I should tell you that we're going to look at that data in some detail, because while historically apartment complexes have chosen single or perhaps a series of meters that might be 10 or 12 meters for a 100-unit or 200-unit apartment complex, we're now seeing individual meters for apartment complexes, some of them very large, up to 500 units so far. So it's an exciting time in terms of construction, but I think that that may skew our historical information that we're interested in, so we'll take a look at how we can make some corrections for that.
The next item is concerning the boat stall fees, and we have a report. We have an individual who has requested to speak on that. Might be well that we go ahead and discuss it and talk about it first, or you could speak first if you prefer, but it might be better to let, is Mr. Burchett here?
He is.
Yes.
Mr. Bell, would you like to go first, or?
Pardon me?
Go ahead.
I couldn't hear.
You can speak now, you can speak now, or you can let us.
I'll speak now.
Okay.
As you can, thank you, Chairman White, Ms. Slaughter, members of the trust. I'm Dale Brochet. I'm a board member of the Lake Hefner Boat Owners Association. And as you can imagine, when this report came out in the agenda, the internets and the and the emails and the tweets fired up. We're a little concerned looking at a 251% boat stall increase in such a short period of time. The report says that costs are up 30%, which we realize, and we fully realize that our boat stalls should have increased every year to keep pace with the increase in costs. And to hit us, I mean, we don't mind paying more for the boat stalls. We'd certainly like more maintenance out there. But what we'd like to see is a more graduated increase, perhaps over a longer period of time, a little bit lower steps than what we're seeing now. We've lost a great number of sailors and boaters out there because of the water situation, and I'm really afraid that we'll lose quite a few more if the stall increases are as drastic as they could possibly be.
When's the last time we had an increase?
97.
Our records indicate 1997 is the last time we increased the boat stall fees, and that goes to, frankly, followed some, or was concurrent with improvements we were making to the boat stalls then, which now, of course, require more maintenance than they did at one time. So what we did was look at what we found in our review for the new Draper stalls and translated that into application at Lake Hefner. This is meant to be a talking piece. We're interested in guidance from the trust about next steps for the staff as we go forward with implementing new rates, including what is appropriate to continue to set boat stall fees based on length, as we have for the first fee at Lake Draper, where we were only considering 38-foot stalls, to Lake Hefner, where we're considering stalls from as small as 9 by 22, pardon me, I need to read my notes, as small as 9 by 20 up to 14 by 36, so very different stalls. Let me tell you a couple of other things. 152 of the 498 stalls are covered. About half of the smaller stalls, pardon me, about half of the very small stalls are covered, while just 37 of the stalls that are 10 by 24 and larger are covered. And I think that was in assumption that those larger stalls would likely on Lake Hefner hold sailboats. The current Hefner fee is $1.72 a foot. The proposal at Draper, again, with an all-new marina, is $6.05 a foot. Translating that in contrast with the Hefner fees, that's a very large rate increase of $4.33 a foot, typically.
Are we considering a single uniform rate, or are we considering rates based upon stall size?
You may consider either at your choice.
Okay.
At Draper, we set one rate contrasted with other marinas that we found, and calculated it based on footage, knowing that we will have other sizes at Draper. But we did set just the one rate because we have other stalls to build in incoming projects.
I would think from an administrative standpoint, just a single rate would be easier to keep track of.
Yes.
Right? And I don't know if there's a big difference among users.
Well, yeah, if I may, one big difference is that you compared rates to Arkansas and Texas, and you looked at the linear feet of those rates, but I don't think you looked at the width of those. Our slips at Hefner are very narrow. The 20-foot slip, the 20-foot 9 by 20-foot slip, is very difficult for a 20-foot sailboat to fit into. So we thought perhaps that if it wouldn't be a lot of trouble, we might want to look at a square footage rate. But I understand, too, that if you're trying to keep it in line with Lake Draper, that would just be confusing. I don't really know how to address that part.
I really think the markets are different between Draper and Hefner for a couple of reasons. One is that the lake fluctuates more at Draper, at Hefner, and is less usable as you go down. You go down 8 to 10 feet at Draper, you still got a lot of area to go. You're down that far at Hefner, and it's kind of marginal. The other is those are fixed docks at Hefner. Those are floating docks at Draper, and so again, they're not quite as nice. I'm not sure that. I think they're just different animals, and so I think it's okay to have different rates. Sure. Because, and I don't know what percent you should be shooting for of the market rate. I don't think 100%. I think the market rate's a good thing to have, and that's a good benchmark for you. I'm not sure 100% of benchmark is probably achievable out at Hefner because of the fixed stocks and because of the water. And I don't know what number would be right. If we should phase into 75% of that number and do that over a 3-year or 4-year period or something like that, that to me seems like maybe a reasonable approach to go.
Market set by municipal boats, facilities, or was the market all over the board? I don't think we got to be in the business of competing with the private sector on these things. So if we do that, I think that ought to be thrown out of the equation. And secondly, I think there needs to be some correlation between the length of the slip and the rent fee, but I don't think we ought to recover more than our costs. And I think it's important that we do recover our costs, but having extra money to devote to other facilities, other activities, I don't think that's our job out there. I think we ought to try to collect what we are entitled to, which is to recover our costs associated with the program.
And we would actually like to see some betterment, at the docks. We think we could draw more people with boats if the facilities were improved over time. So,
Well, if we can kind of get comfortable as to what we're using as a market calculation, right, to Councilman Ryan's point, I would agree with Jim's comments about phasing it in over a period of time, but I would also suggest that we kind of establish some sort of index that we're going to track markets and that we don't get 20 years behind raising boat slips, and that we have an agreement and understanding with the users that maybe it's every year, maybe it's every other year, but we have these smaller incremental adjustments, because that's one of the things we've done on the water side very well, and consequently we're able to stay ahead of the curve. And I just don't know why we haven't done it here, but it makes sense. And I personally wouldn't be adverse to just saying one rate per slip. I mean, if you want to handle the administrative tracking of 12 of these slips and 8 of those and 6 of those and do all that, that's fine. If it's easier, then let's just kind of gross it up, get a number, phase into it, and then stay on top of it going forward.
If you go back to, I don't remember what year it was, but in the 80 or 97, 98, somewhere when we did the rehab over there, that was a big deal. It was real controversial. Before that time, it was a little unseemly out there. Some of them had actually literally been converted into fishing shacks, if you will. There wouldn't be a boat there. There'd just be a permanent structure like an ice fishing cabin of some type out there that was closed in. Some of them had TVs in there, and it was more of a place to get away from mom and drink beer. I think it wasn't necessarily fish, and fishing was certainly more over boating at that point in time. And so we did a pretty good job of cleaning them out at that time, established some rules, and we rehabbed. And at that time, it was fairly controversial, but we had a fairly long-term rate structure, basically set aside to recover our costs over time. But to both of your points, I think we have not done a good job over the last 10 years or so of getting them closer up to market, and take a look at what the additional needs and services that the boaters want out there.
Should we phase in this over a 3 or 4 year period? I mean, has anybody looked at any of that?
Well, I would think so. Yeah. I would think some type of.
What's the total revenue impact we're looking at here?
Currently, the stalls, when we have normal water levels of having about 80 or 90% occupancy, somewhere in the range of $200,000 to $250,000 a year.
Okay.
And we have to remit from the non-ratepayer side to the ratepayer side of the organization repayment of most of those dollars for the loan at the ratepayer side to get the original construction done.
Okay.
And the second part is when we talk about uniform, the survey was done using the length not the length and the width. The length and the width, by the user groups back in the early 90s when we set the rates, they wanted to use the front and one side to determine the linear feet for the reasons that Dale brought up, rather than just one side. The users around the state and other states usually price based on just one length, and that's the length.
Okay.
They don't usually do both. We can calculate them both ways, and the uniform is based upon having one rate per foot based on just the one number, not a same fee for every stall.
Sure. Okay, I see.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there ought to be a distinction between the cost of a small slip and a big slip.
Yeah. Well, if the linear foot captures that, then I'm okay with recognizing it.
Okay, good feedback. So we'll bring you back a report that describes options for implementation of a series of rates.
I think we should shoot a target of what the percentage of the market rate should be, and I don't know what that number is. I threw out 75%. I just pulled that out of the air. I don't have any basis for that. There might be some, but I really do believe that it needs to be discounted because of the fixed stocks and because of the variable water levels out there of some amount.
Well, I think we ought to look at some improvements out there, too. We could use
That's
water
fine.
and electricity on some of those docks. It would be a big help, because I know when I sailed out there, it was a problem to get water sometimes where you could clean your boats up.
I'd like to see it when we come back also, to have a built-in trigger that we reevaluate it, say, after 2 years or 3 years. This 17 years is, when you think about the pressure that's on the Water Trust to provide amenities that can't come out of ratepayers' money, that has to come out of this kind of money, to go 17 years without picking some of this money up that we could have been using to maintain and improve and all that stuff is really not a smart way to do it. So I'd like to have it include something in it that says we'll reevaluate it every 36 months or something. And the people at least that would know that going in, but it would keep that cost escalating and that revenue then escalating, so we'd have more money to spend on the kinds of things that all of you'd like to have.
Right, even simple things like keeping the lights on out there, especially the lights into the harbor. So sometimes those lights are out, and it's very difficult to see on dark nights.
Yeah, but particularly the lights have been troubling for us lately, and one of the reasons we're excited about adjusting the rates is the lights were really good at a time, but they're no longer maintainable. It has to do with changes in standards for light bulbs, essentially, is what's driven part of that. But we can do better. We can get you better lighting at a lower watt per hour, kilowatt per hour, I think.
Will this come back at the next meeting with another
We will say
pass at it?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your
your time.
comments.